Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. Dive into two more true and gripping tales that blur the lines between reality and imagination, where encounters with parallel universes reshuffle everyday life. Witness Samantha's unsettling experience with a major multi-vehicle traffic accident which seems to erase itself from history, and join Jake as he stumbles upon a village that appears to inexplicably teleport to an entirely different location. Such accounts leave us questioning the continuity of everyday existence, inviting us into worlds where altered versions of the past replace what we know to be real. The accident erased from history. It was one morning in early January 2024 in a rural city in Washington state when Samantha awoke to the sound of sirens emanating from a nearby road. Groggily pulling herself out of bed, she shuffled over to peek through the blinds and saw the flashing lights of multiple police cars and ambulances stopped along the main road near her house. Still half asleep, it took her a moment to fully process the chaotic scene unfolding. It seemed like there had been a major car accident on the adjacent main road. After a quick breakfast, Samantha headed out to her car, bracing herself for what was sure to be a messy morning commute. As expected, traffic was held at a standstill as emergency crews worked to clear the accident scene and local deputies directed vehicles. She could see 3 mangled vehicles being loaded onto tow trucks, while paramedics tended to several injured people. It was at this time that Samantha called her office to let her manager know she'd be late coming in. Due to there being a bit of a wait at the roadblock, Samantha got out of her car and exchanged small talk with a couple of other commuters who lived in the area, who had also been stopped before finally being directed to pass. After finally arriving at work, Samantha recounted the details of the accident to her co-workers, who had only heard vague reports on their own commutes. That evening after work, Samantha tuned into the local news, expecting more coverage on the major crash in her area earlier that day. Strangely though, there was no mention of it. She flipped through other channels, thinking maybe she had just missed the story, but none had any reports about a significant accident in her area. Puzzled, Samantha went onto the local police department's Facebook page, knowing they frequently posted updates about local incidents. Again, though, there was no evidence of the collision she had clearly witnessed the aftermath of that morning. Starting to doubt herself, Samantha texted a few neighbours and co-workers, asking if they knew about the accident. Some of the co-workers being the same who had vaguely recalled it earlier the same day. None had any idea what she was talking about. In fact, none of the same co-workers she had asked earlier in person even recalled her asking about it. Anxious and confused, Samantha hardly slept that night, unable to shake the strange event. The next morning, Samantha drove down the same road, looking for any signs of the previous day's incident. The road showed no markings or damage whatsoever. Passing near the exact location, she saw no lingering emergency vehicles, debris, or anything at all out of the ordinary. It was as if it had never happened. Samantha drove to work that day in a daze, her mind spinning. How could she have such a vivid recollection of something that seemingly never occurred? Nearing the supposed accident site again, she pulled over to speak to a man out walking his dog. She described in detail the appearance of a man, one of the local commuters she had chatted with along the road the day before, as they were stuck at the roadblock. But the dog walker just stared at her in confusion. "Miss, I think you must be mistaken. The man you're describing has been dead for over a year now." Utterly disturbed, Samantha called in sick for work and spent the day racking her brain. She pored over old news reports but found no evidence to corroborate her memories. It was as if she had witnessed an accident take place in her own parallel reality, some alternate version of events that no one else could confirm. Over the following weeks, Samantha discreetly questioned dozens of locals about the inexplicable missing crash. No matter how vividly she recounted the details, nobody could validate her claims. She considered contacting the police, but worried about being dismissed or even referred for psychiatric treatment. Her sleep grew restless as she lay awake pondering what had happened. How could her memory of that morning be so clear, yet with no basis in reality that she could prove? Samantha soon began to withdraw herself from others, becoming increasingly isolated in her disoriented state. For many weeks, she stopped engaging with friends and neighbours, unable to think about anything but the bizarre experience plaguing her mind. Her performance at work also suffered, and she even received a warning from her manager that if it continued, he would be forced to let her go. Gradually, however, Samantha was finally able to make peace with the unexplainable experience. Although she still had no concrete answers about what exactly had happened to her that fateful January morning, she had at least regained some stability and learned to coexist with the unsettling altered world that she had stepped into for a day. The teleporting village. Jake was an average 16-year-old. One day in September 2018, he met a girl named Sophia online. Though she lived in another country, they quickly became good friends. Sophia was from a small village that Jake took an interest in looking up on Google Maps. He would occasionally glance at the satellite view of her house and surrounding village to get a sense of the remote rural area Sophia called home. Over the next 2 years, checking in on Sophia's village became a bit of a habit for Jake whenever he pulled up one of his map apps. The tiny rural village was located about 10 kilometres north of a major city in Sophia's country. Jake became very familiar with its location in relation to the city and other major landmarks. There were no significant geological features or industries near the rural village, just dense sprawling forest and farmland. Sometime shortly before July 7th, 2020, Jake pulled up Google Maps to look at Sophia's village as he regularly did. But this time, something was off. The village was no longer 10 kilometres north of the city. It seemed to have shifted much farther north, nearly 20 kilometres away. Jake was confused, thinking it must be a glitch. He put in the village name directly to search. The results shocked Jake. It showed the village exactly where he saw it on the map, nearly 20 kilometres north of its original location. Not only that, but a massive 5-kilometre wide quarry now bordered the south side of the village, replacing the farmland that Jake remembered being there. Jake messaged a local business in the area to ask about the quarry. They told him it was over 100 years old and had always been located there. He also discovered aerial photographs of the area online, which confirmed the massive quarry dated back to at least the 1940s. When Jake asked Sophia about it, she corroborated what the local business had told him, that the quarry had always been right next to her village. But Jake vividly remembered otherwise from the many times he had looked at maps of Sophia's rural village over the last 2 years. Jake was baffled as to how both the village and the landscape could change locations and features overnight. He considered different explanations: a glitch on both Google and Apple Maps, his own disorientation of distance or faulty memory. But the vividness of his recollection coupled with multiple undeniable affirmations that the quarry had always been there, pointed to a more unexplainable conclusion. Jake had never used drugs, at least not anything beyond alcohol or tobacco. His only diagnosed mental health conditions were anxiety and panic disorders, but those hadn't been active when he first viewed the village maps without a quarry. There was also no reason to believe they could have elicited any kind of altered perception. The most plausible explanation Jake could think of was some kind of shift between parallel realities or timelines. Over the following months, Jake remained perplexed by the incident. He questioned his own sanity and memory. Should he bring this up with his psychiatrist or therapist? Was it simply an incongruence within his own mind that caused this perceived geographical discrepancy? Or was there truly something unexplainable, perhaps even paranormal, at play? The abrupt geological change of Sophia's village and surrounding landscape continued to nag at Jake's mind. He knew the location so well from repeatedly viewing it for over 2 years. He felt it was impossible for him to have somehow imagined it in a different place the entire time, almost 10 kilometres from its actual location, while every time completely failing to spot the 5-kilometre wide quarry which immediately bordered it. This was especially significant as the village was surrounded by dense forest and farmland, and the contrast between the two terrains would seem impossible to miss. The vivid clarity of his memory seemed to point to a glitch in reality itself, not just in Jake's own mind. Yet the rational part of Jake knew such an explanation defied logic. How could a whole village move locations? How could a massive quarry appear overnight when none had existed before? There seemed to be only 2 possibilities. Either Jake's memory and perception of reality was flawed and continued to falter for over 2 years, or something extraordinary had occurred that defied rational explanation. With no concrete answers forthcoming, Jake's fixation on the issue only intensified. He began to question what else in his life might not be as he remembered it. What other discrepancies existed that he simply hadn't noticed yet? The foundations of Jake's world felt permanently shaken. Seeking some form of understanding, Jake discovered and delved deep into other accounts of encounters with parallel universes from people online. While impossible to prove, the parallel universe explanation resonated with Jake as the only plausible one for the sudden change in Sophia's village location that he so vividly recalled viewing so many times before. Although, while it seemed the most likely, ultimately Jake has come to accept that he may never truly know for sure what caused the geographical discrepancy he experienced. He has chosen to view it as a fascinating curiosity, perhaps even a glimpse into a grander reality beyond what humans can comprehend. While still unsettling, framing it in this way helped Jake to move forward in his life without being consumed by the lingering mystery.